This is the War Room Roundtable podcast, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant businessmen and women on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they've learned on the road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their successes into your life and business. The War Room Roundtable is brought to you by your hosts, Jason Miller, CEO of Strategic Advisor Board, and Phillip Lanos, CEO of Own the Rhythm, and former podcast host for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. Welcome to the War Room. It is an absolute pleasure to introduce Michael Ravenwood to the show today. How you doing, man?
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
Yeah, we're doing good, man. As you know, we just performed a magic trick before we hit record earlier today. But it's not about magic and tricks. This is about actual discipline and craft. And it's going to be an interesting conversation today. And I usually start off by asking if someone is from a family of business owners or entrepreneurs. So in the spirit of that, I'd love to start off there if it's relevant for you.
Yeah, well, my dad was an entrepreneur, and he was an international merchant banker. He used to work for Pika in Southeast Asia, and then when we moved here in the 80s, he started his own company. So yeah, I come from a family of at least one entrepreneur.
Right on. And now, do you have entertainers in your family as well?
Not per se. No, not like in the business of entertainment. I'd say that, pretty much every member of my family is a crack up, but I don't know if that counts.
Right on. All right. So the reason why I ask is I'm so curious is how you landed on this path. At what point can you attribute it to any one thing in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, I was a martial artist for many years, and I ended up being interested in natural healing after graduating in psychology. I was interested in sort of all aspects of health and just becoming the best human being I could be. And so I kind of went from the, mental side of things, get my degree in psychology, and then into the physical side of things by getting into, natural healing and alternative medicine and things like that. So I ended up working for Whole Foods and nutrition department, and then managing the department, then working as an apprentice for a doctor who ran his own healing center. And then, I ended up at Esalen Institute, which is a really amazing place in Big Sur where, incredible people like Hunter S. Thompson and Abraham Maslow and just like some really incredible people, ended up gathering during a very profound cultural transformation in the 60s. And so the doctor that I was working for, he was teaching a workshop there, and I ended up in the cafeteria. And I just overheard some people who ended up being massage therapists, actually, just talking about fire dancing. And I was like, this is fascinating. So I leaned in. I was like, excuse me, I'm wondering what you're talking about. It sounds fascinating to me. And they kind of described it further. And I was like, well, I know some martial art. I know some stick fighting and some staff and stuff like that. Like, maybe I could share some techniques with you and it would help you, or da-da. And they looked at each other, looked at me, and they're like, well, we're training tonight. Why don't you come? And so, I went to the spot where they were training, and I was just mesmerized. It looked so cool. Like, especially the poi, which are these instruments which are on tethers. I couldn't figure out if it was like a rigid instrument or if it was on a chain or whatever, just so magical. And that same night, I was like, hey, I'd love to try it. And I don't recommend this to any of my students. Like, the first time you see it, like you go out and try it or whatever. But, because I had some martial arts experience, they were like, well, let me see you spin a staff, And so I spun a staff for a minute, and they're like, yeah, okay. You can do it. The style that you have, you're not going to burn yourself. So go ahead. So I got to do it actually the first night that I ever saw it. And it was a beautiful thing. And I kind of had some inertia in my life, didn't start right away, like doing it all the time. But then on down the road, I just started doing it. And I didn't ever do it to like get people to look at me. I mean, I was a class clown, and definitely like, I like it when I get attention and I get like energy and whatever, and I turn on. But like, it wasn't to have people look at me. It was because it felt really amazing. And it was just, I don't know, it was a beautiful practice for me. And so, I ended up being a performer. I didn't go to school for performance. I just kind of like started doing this thing, and then people would start to watch me. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then certain people were like, hey, can you come over here and do that? I'm like, oh, I'm busy. They're like, we'll pay you. I'm like, oh, well, okay. And that's how I got started in performance as a career.
Yeah. Yeah, no one's going to turn down money. I mean, you're like, oh, I do it for the love of it. But if you're going to pay me, now I get paid. I do what I love. And it's also healing to me when I'm doing it, which was an important part of the story as you were bringing it up as its origins. You were interested in the healing and the fact that it gave you energy beyond, like, the work itself had merit to you. That's what I'm trying to get at. And the reward was in the work itself, which is really interesting to have as a quality for something that you're doing. So
you're actually speaking to one of the core principles of SkyFire Academy. So my company is SkyFire Arts, but there is SkyFire Academy, SkyFire Marketplace, and SkyFire Events, where we bring all the other three elements together. And the Academy has as a core principle that love is a sustainable energy. That like the sun rains down energy from the sky, tidal movements can power buoys to move and generate power. All the different elements we can use to generate power, but we are a natural thing. We are an occurrence of the earth. And when we love something, we can work tirelessly for hours. So if we learn to take what we love, create something of value in the world so that others are happy to pay us, then actually we're sustaining ourselves career-wise by something that we get free energy for. So that's one of the core principles. Yeah. Yeah,
no, deep, man. Also, you just laid down on us that you got this crystal clear business model. You're like, I got this company, that company, that company. This is how they work together. I want to get into that. But before I do, I want to let Jason step in and give his thoughts on everything he's heard so far.
It's always the things that you never think are going to be a business that become one. Every single time. It is always not, that's not true. Not always, but a lot of the time it is, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs turn a passion into a project, and then people see the project and go, man, that's cool. I want to be a part of that. And then the next thing you know, it's a full-blown business, right? So it's anytime you can connect passion to purpose, that's where the fireworks happen, right? When you have to do the shove a square peg in a round hole thing to try to force something to work, it never does, right? So it's like me and Phillip started this podcast kind of just for fun, really. And, and look where it is today. It's just insane how it's came along. And it was all by accident, right? So that's just one thing. But the beauty behind it is accidents change people's lives.
Oh, absolutely. You're actually keying into the story of how the whole business part started for me, so that was, me starting to make money as a fire dancer, but I can't really call that a business. I was still working another job, whatnot. But then, one day I thought to myself, God, how I love to spin fire, the roar, the flame, and the light and the shadow. What would it be like to dance with electricity? It's another primal energy. It's thrilling, kind of dangerous. Like, what would that be like? And 2 weeks later, I'm standing in Starbucks, waiting in line for my coffee. And the guy standing next to me starts talking to the woman over the counter about his lightning project. And I'm just like, that is too strange. I listen. And eventually I can't help myself. I turn to him like, excuse me, I don't mean to eavesdrop, but I have to talk to you. I was just thinking about dancing with lightning. I'm a fire dancer. I tell him my story. And he looks at me and he's like, that is really weird that you would think those thoughts and run into me, because I build some of the largest Tesla coils in the world. In fact, I own TeslaCoil.com. And beyond that, I have designed a high voltage protective suit in which you can dance with electricity, and my big idea, just to be really transparent, my big idea was to strap stun guns to the end of a stick and like keep their buttons down, and get a groin cup and a pair of goggles and probably hurt myself, but then, that would be like 2 inches of lightning, right? This guy was building coils that were doing like 15 long foot arcs of electricity. And since then, I've been able to do that. And then there's the whole turning that into a business thing. Like you said, it's like you love something, it becomes a project, and then, you know, enough dedication, enough discipline, and you get a business out of it one day. And that's where I'm at.
Man, I need to see these videos. I have yet to see that. And it makes me sad because while I'm hearing this, actually, it makes me more excited for it. Now that I've heard the story, I have something to look forward to. I can also see how you could easily go into the special effects world, like the real special effects world, right? For movies and things like that, especially indie films. Just, I can almost imagine like being able, you know, it's one thing to see Thor with CGI. It's another to see you doing badass dance moves with electricity flying out. And oh man, I there's so much potential for what you're doing. And it's really fascinating that the entire way you're just coming across people, being your genuine self, talking to them and having things line up with synchronicity. Do you ever wonder about that? Ask yourself those questions.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, right now I'm taking a training course on Mind Valley with Vishen Lakiani. I had the honor of meeting him one day. It was awesome. He's a great human being. And so in this particular course that he's running that I'm taking right now, it's called Silva Ultramind. They actually talk about how there's different states of consciousness, like beta is where we're normally at. Alpha is more relaxed, kind of below that. Theta is where like ultra creativity and things like that are associated with. And then there's delta, which you normally only experience when you're asleep. But there is a way to train yourself to stay awake in delta. And that is a path that you can take to beginning to bring more of the synchronicity into your life. Because what is a dream like, right? If you look at the table and you think like, oh, I wonder if those flowers are going to grow on the table, and then all of a sudden the flowers grow, right? Like whatever you think in your dream kind of like immediately happens. And that does kind of happen sometimes when we're awake, right? Those are what we call synchronicities. Like I was just thinking about my friend and then boom, they called. And so like the ability to sort of bridge those worlds and try and draw more of that kind of seemingly magical occurrence into your life is a thing that kind of everybody would want, right? But it takes a certain amount of mental discipline. Because, for example, you don't want to start thinking about the wrong thing when you're in the state when you're dreaming, right? Like you want to have a very disciplined mind and relaxed state of being. So it takes some training to get right. But I have been, you know, this is the latest course, the one that I just talked about that I'm taking, but I've been training for many years in Qigong and yoga and Kung Fu and things like that help to hone the mind. And, you know, I'm feeling very excited about this next phase. Things are kind of popping for me right now.
It's weird. It's literally one of those synchronicity things. I thought I was the only one that like really, all the people I've known for the last, I think the happiest times of my life were when I was practicing the Jose Silva thinking method. I remember it was one of the few times in my life I was like, all right, if it's a ritual, I'll do it in the morning, I'll do it in the afternoon, I'll do it at night. And eventually I started finding that things were happening. This was all before I ever moved to New York. And a lot of weird things happened when I did it. And then I went to live my life, worked at a digital agency and totally forgot about it. But I never forgot what kind of impact it had on my life. And it's weird that I just hear you say that now, because I've rarely ever heard other people talk about that thing specifically. So that there's just a lot of synchronicities that follow you, man. It's a really peculiar experience. But then again, given the work that you do, I shouldn't be surprised, right? So what does this mean for entrepreneurs and business owners? Well, you yourself, how do you approach the idea of maintaining, crafting, designing business? Because when we follow your journey, right, you have a very straightforward, no nonsense, genuine, authentic, which is a thing that's really come across on this show as a big pattern and one of the strengths that good entrepreneurs have, right? But then there's these other qualities that everybody else gets to bring to the table, and I'm trying to extract that from you, and I'm wondering, how do you yourself view the design and the building of a business? We talked about this like very, very briefly before we hit record, but I just want to get your opinion and your feelings about the idea of a business and how that should run.
Sure. So it actually is a more recent sort of epiphany that hit me around like, what exactly is a business, or how does a business itself work? Well, right. And so the way my business is, I think, is essentially like every business works in a certain way, but then it's different in other ways. So what I came to was that essentially all business is a cycle of love. So in my business, there's the creative department, and the creative department creates amazing things, spectacular things. And, because of the goals of our company, it's not just a spectacular thing that's like a flash in the pan. We want to draw people's attention to ecological awareness and renewable energy. So we have to get creative about, okay, how are we conveying this message within the context of a spectacular show? How are we conveying empowering ideas, right? So that turns me on. That's like exciting. That's where I connect to my love, right? So the creative department creates this thing that is, hopefully of value, right? And then, and so there to some degree is a discipline in that, but there's also fun. You have to have fun if you're going to be like doing it for a long time, and you're going to be facing the difficulties that you're going to have to face. I remember that I watched this keynote speech. I'm trying to remember. Why can't I remember the guy who basically did the whole Apple? What is his name?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. Thank you. So he was doing a keynote speech at a college, and he was talking about like, you got to love it, or else you're not going to be able to make it through the dark night of the soul. So in essence, there's that piece of it, the creative department. You're doing what you love. But then these days, if you create something you love, you can't just go on the street corner and, wave a flag and be like, hey, come buy this thing I love. You've got to have some way to create media that gives people the feeling that they're going to have when they have your product or service, because people are emotionally motivated, right? They're not necessarily things that are intellectual, they're great, but like, it's really the emotions that motivates to actions. So you've got to have a marketing department. And the marketing department is responsible for creating and disseminating media that is effective at conveying the feeling that your creation is going to provide people, right? The value of the service. Then once you actually make contact with an individual person, or you want to go and reach out to an individual person, then you got your sales department. And that is where, an individual is one-on-one, and you get to like build relationship, and you get to like find out what their needs are. Already over here in the marketing department, you're finding out like, what are their needs? How are we addressing the needs of the people that, because really it's about service. And again, like I said, it's about love. So we create something we love out of our love of creation. And then we, find the people who are going to love it. We make contact with those people. Then the business department in our case or whatnot is like kind of making sure the love comes alive, it stays alive, like make sure we stay friends by getting a contract that's like where it's a clear agreement and everybody understands what's going to be going on. So you move into, okay, we get a signed contract, we accept the deposit. In our case, we accept a deposit. And then the production department goes into, action. And then they actually like bring what the creative department has designed and everything and put it, at the event of the individual who's hired us, or in the case of SkyFire events, we, at our own event, whatnot. And then, selling tickets, that's a whole kind of different model than getting hired by somebody else. Right. But, then, we produce the thing, and that's where the love that those people have of our creation gets to actually be fulfilled. Like we get to love creating it. They get to love receiving it. And then we go into this kind of rebirth cycle where, business department gets the final payment. Production department says what worked, what didn't. Same with the kind of creative department, and the marketing department takes to take all the media that we capture the show and turn it into more stuff. And then boom, we just go around and around like that. So it's a cycle of love business in essence. And there's a lot of sections where like, you've just got a balance between like, okay, how are we enjoying ourselves? And how are we disciplining how are we keeping it tight? Because that's necessary too.
I mean, it doesn't get any realer than that, man.
Just explain the entire business life cycle right there. So, which, by the way, can be applied to any company, what you just said.
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
any company.
Totally.
Doing a talk for business conferences where I go into that after I lightning dance, like a lightning dance, and then I take off the mask and I go, business is all about the movement of power. What is power but love, or whatever. Like, I haven't written it yet, but that's
that is an event, man.
There you go.
Oh man, I'm so glad I asked that. You just I knew that there was going to be a solid answer. I didn't anticipate that it would be as elaborate as you broke it down, but I also, being a martial artist, I'm not surprised that you have taken great pains to understand what is the technique, right? What is the flow? What are we doing here? How does it look? What is the dance? You go on and go on. What is the choreography here, right? All of those things, which seem like intangibles in the business world, but they're actual tangibles in creative work, you have been able to throw in to help enhance the way you look at business, right? So that it's not just an intellectual experience for you. And I think that it's a better answer than I could have ever hoped for, as we highlighted. And there's only really two other questions I have left, even though I'd love to be on here forever and get to know you, man. Next time you're in LA, just know you got a friend in me.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate that.
Before I go to the last two, I want to check in with Jason and just make sure, because our last two questions are just the younger self and the grand finale.
Well, I love personally there's typically some connection, right, with a good majority of people that they were connected to sports or something in their earlier life where they were on a team or something of that, and that was a contributing factor to their success. And so you being the martial artist doesn't surprise me that you're here where you are. I had the wonderful experience back in the mid 90s when I was in the military to be able to grapple with the Gracie brothers. And they're just little guys, and here we are, these military, guys thinking, yeah, whatever, right? They rolled me up like a freaking taco, man. Right? But you know what I got from that? Humility in a very big way. Right. And, I learned a lot through that experience because we spent 2 weeks with them. Wow. And I learned a lot through that experience, how to apply leadership through martial arts, how you think, this is your greatest weapon, not these. This really is your best weapon, not your hands or your feet or any of that. It's how you think and then act with these, right? And it's the same in business, right? This is your greatest weapon in business right here. This, mush in between the 6 inches of your ears. That's the power is right there. So, you've taken something that was a love and a passion, and you turned it into something very special. And that's really awesome what you've done.
Thank you.
Man. No, there's just so much great energy to come from this. I want business owners to be able to walk away from this conversation, entrepreneurs to walk away from this conversation going, feeling invigorated, electrified from your story, and to say to themselves, yeah, it's time to throw new energy into my business. If at any point I started feeling like it was stagnant, like let's reinvigorate that, right? Because like you said, we are a natural force ourselves. And if we can tap into that, it should be the reward in itself just to be doing the work. And I just want to bring back all those teachings along with the journey that you've had so far, and then ask if you could go back to, let's say, that party where you saw the fire dancers and you were still, on the lookout, but knowing what you know now, if you got a chance to just run into yourself, what would you say to yourself then?
So I think that, there's a number of things. One is trust your feelings. Your feelings are the thing that connect you to like all of the different parts and pieces. Your mind can come up with a million reasons why you should and a million reasons why you shouldn't, and be right about all of them. And it's your body somehow that really can just universally apprehend like all those factors all at once and just tell you like, yeah, this person can be trusted, or no, this person cannot be trusted. And it may not even be like they're a wicked person. Maybe they're a well-intentioned person, but they're still not telling you the truth. And, so to trust your feelings. Also focus. One of my primary lessons, has been focus. I get so excited. I'm easily enthusiastic about all kinds of different threads of the project. If I had, earlier on learned how to choose one dimension, one thing, focus on that until it reaches a certain completion point, and then focus on the next thing, and just how to put things on the back burner. Like you can honor the ideas and creative things you have by putting them on the back burner, because they're still there. You've got those ideas, you've got those concepts, but you're not dishonoring, the current thing that you're working on by like splitting your energy and your attention off in this other, realm where the inertia then doesn't allow you to really follow through on the things that you are already working on. So, I guess focus and trust, in 2 words.
Yeah, no, big. As soon as you started saying focus, Jason was eyeing me like, come on, Phillip. I have a habit of getting wild ideas myself. And, it's a great reminder to be focused for sure. And that's just realize that even if you have the capacity for all those things, can you really do your best doing all of them all at the same time? I mean, I didn't practice spinning plates, for America's Got Talent or something. That's not what this is about. So I think that's solid words to leave to a younger self, a younger version, especially if they realize it's coming from you. And it's like, really? So, all right. Yeah, I can't really say no to someone who is me from the future saying, trust me, save yourself a lot of time and energy. With that said, the grand finale question, for all 10 million points in this show, let's show them what we've got as a prize. If you could have invited anybody, dead or alive, to this conversation today, based on everything we just covered, if you had a moment to reflect here, who would you choose and why?
That is a really challenging question for me, because I have so many heroes. Like, I want to say Nikola Tesla, obviously. I want to say Jesus Christ and Buddha, obviously, like for other reasons. The one person that keeps coming back to my head, though, is Sri Yukteswar. And I know that probably won't mean anything to most people, unless you've read Autobiography of a Yogi. But there was an incredible human named Paramahansa Yogananda that transformed the whole area that I live. I live in Encinitas, and he started a temple down here. And I think that the whole thing I mentioned about the Silva method, I get the sense that Sri Yukteswar would have a lot to say about that whole process and be able to teach me like kind of all the way down the road, because he was Paramahansa's teacher. And so like I was tempted to say, well, Paramahansa Yogananda, but then I'm like, well, what about his teacher? Like how would it be to get to his teacher? And I would say Babaji, which is his kind of but we don't even know if that's actually a real human being or a mythological character. So I was going to go with real human being for sure. You got photographs and stuff like that.
What I love about those answers, man, and just about your journey all the way, is something that I think is like, it's something I need to work on, right? I have no problem giving people advice, but being advised is another thing, right? And one thing that's really true about your journey is how coachable you were the whole way, right? Like, whether through observing the phenomenon of life itself and taking cues, right? Or explicitly through other people, like you've mentioned, just in passing, the mentors you may have had in your life for business or what, or even the fire dancers, and being willing to learn on the spot in the moment. That coachability is truly an element, a facet of the makeup of an entrepreneur that I haven't talked to a single entrepreneur who feels like they've learned everything yet. All of them are like, I'm still just getting started, still learning. So I hope you never lose that. Those are my closing thoughts, and I'll pass it over to Jason to close us out.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on. Just as a last note, where do people go watch your videos?
Oh, thank you so much.
And connect with you.
There's always that part. Yeah. So it's SkyFireArts.com is our website. We've, of course, got, SkyFire Arts on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as Michael Ravenwood. But, our company's on there as well. We're on Instagram, we're now on TikTok and everything, like as SkyFire Arts is the way. And I did a talk at Google, so you can look on the YouTube page and check that out if you, really connected with what I was sharing today and you want to hear, like, it's an hour long, and it's kind of the story of how my life went, like the story of my life in parallel with my story as a, now business owner, the person who created SkyFire Arts. So those are some places you can look. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah,
cool. Other than that, thank you for taking the time to be here, brother. It was enlightening, for sure. No pun intended.
See what you did there?
Yeah, see what I did there? There was a lot of great nuggets to take away from this for the audience, no doubt. And thanks for taking the time to be here. I appreciate you, brother.
You're most welcome. I'm very grateful to have been invited, and look forward to more collaborations in the future.
Hey, cheers.
All right. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the War Room Roundtable with your hosts, Jason Miller and Phillip Lanos. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and always remember, if you can dream it and believe it, then you can go achieve it. We'll see you in the next episode.